Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to the Robin Hobb book tag. This tag doesn't have any spoilers for Robin Hobb. It's more developed from prompts that appear in her books, like the magic systems and potential characters and stuff, so you can watch this tag safely, I promise. I'll link all of the questions down below, and I saw this on Judith's channel, but I think the creator's name is Stephanie, so I will link both of those below as well. But without further ado, let's get into the questions. If you didn't know already, Robin Hobb is one of my favourite authors. The first question on this tag is the skill, which is favourite magical ability, and I really do like the abilities and the magic in Robin Hobb's world. It's very much infused in the world. I like the wit, which is communication mentally and telepathically with animals, but I'm gonna have to think outside of Robin Hobb's world, aren't I? I quite like the Dresden Files magic system because it seems to expand with each book, and I like when magic has a toll on the person, so whether that is tiredness or whether it's irritability or depleted life force or something like that. I like it when there is something affecting the character using magic and they can't just pull from it willy-nilly, because if they pull from it whenever they want to without any consequences, that makes them too overpowered for me. So I quite like in the Dresden Files with Dresden and a whole host of other characters how they all have limits to their abilities. I quite enjoy that, and if they don't have limits, like if they're a Fae character for example, they do have particular weaknesses. If it's not directly linked to their magic and how powerful they are, they have a separate weakness that can inhibit them. So I like that there are always controls in place there. Question number 2 is Fitz, and he's the main character in the Assassin's Apprentice book, the Vivacia trilogy, the first trilogy of Robin Hobb. Question 2 with Fitz is a book that made you cry, and I have a book right here on the bookshelf just out of your sight, and it's by Sebastian de Castell, and this is a 4th book in his Spellslinger series, I believe. A few things with the characters happened in here that made me very emotional, and it was very unexpected, and I don't want to obviously say why, because naturally, because it's an installment in a series, you'll be spoiled, but Spellslinger very much follows Kellen, who is an underdog main character. His town is very driven by power and magic, and those mages often manipulate power in order to come out on top at the detriment of those going up against them, and they tend to pick on the weaklings in their society, and Kellen is very much that weakling. I do like the magic system in here as well. Probably should have picked this for question 1, but magicians in this world, in the Jartep world, they spark bands which appear on their wrists, and each band is symbolic with a different kind of element. So for example, one is breath and one is metal, and so when each band is sparked, then the wizard can form somatic shapes with their hands and manifest magic. And again, it comes with a control, like in the Dresden Files. Similarly, it is a physical toll to the body and the mind. So it's quite interesting. I love this series. It's one of my favorites actually, and this book absolutely made me cry to the point where I had to put the book down and kind of stare at the wall and then regroup in my head and then go back and read the rest of it. Question 3 is full, and that is friendship or friend group. My favourite friend group in a series? It's really hard to think of answers straight off the top of your head. I probably should have prepared for this, but it's not necessarily my favourite, but it's one that is standing out to me immediately because I just rearranged the bookshelf at my partner's place and I put this very directly on the shelf, and it's Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is very much a love letter to D&D, but the camaraderie between the characters is what ultimately got through this book, as well as Clay's voice. So Clay is our protagonist, and I quite like the audiobook because his voice is very sardonic and sarcastic and dry, and that's very much my humour. And Clay and his friends, they are reforming the group that they had when they were kids and they were heroes, and now they're very much veterans and they've got to get the band back together to go and save one of his friend's daughters from peril. So I like the way that they get together and go on this quest, and I like the dynamic between them as well. The dynamic and Clay's voice really carried that book for me. Question number 4 is Althea, which is Protagonist. Althea makes an appearance in the Live Ship Traders series, and I love that series so much. I really need to reread it. My partner's reading it right now, and judging on his experiences, I'm reminiscing on how much I loved them. But Althea, okay, favourite character or favourite protagonist? I don't know if I have one necessarily. I quite like one of the characters, Nighteyes, in Robin Hobb's books, but Nighteyes doesn't come into the story at least until book 2 in the Vivacia trilogy, so I feel like I can't really use Nighteyes. I do again like Harry Dresden, but I feel like I can't pick Dresden again because I've already picked him before. The characters in Joe Abercrombie's books actually quite stand out to me when it comes to their voices. I don't necessarily have like a favourite character in that series, but I have a lot of characters that I admire and respect because they really stick to their guns and stay very true to form and true to their beliefs and ideals, and when they get knocked down, they take as many people down with them as they can because it's grimdark fantasy and nobody is a hero in that story. So I quite like the way that Joe Abercrombie captures tone and voice in his stories and how that makes me connect to characters, even though they're not necessarily my favourite ones, so I've kind of dodged this question, but they're still pretty standout characters to me. Question number 5 is Ophelia, and that is favourite sassy character or funny book. I did laugh out loud a few times when I was reading It Sounded Better in my head, just because the main character is anxious and over the top, and her social skills and her sense of humour combine very well to make for a very funny voice. I generally don't read a lot of contemporary, but when I read this, I smashed through it and I loved it, and it was so uplifting, as you would expect from a bright yellow cover. It really delivered on what the message it was putting out, and so that's why it's one of my favourite contemporary reads. I will reread this again if I'm looking for a laugh, so absolutely this fits this question. Question number 6 is 6 Duchies, and that is your favourite magical setting. I quite like the setting in the Black Prism, so when we follow Kip, he's like our part protagonist because it's a split perspective series, so the way you enter is from Kip's perspective. He's a 16-year-old boy, his mother is very heavily drug addicted, and he's swept away by this kind of mentor figure in Gavin, and Gavin is the Prism. So the Prism is the character or the person that's got quite high up political power because he manages the magic systems, and the magic systems revolve around colour, and he manages those and the balance of the universe, or the balance of the planet I suppose, kind of like their harmony, as well as being a high up political figure. In this world, Kip has the ability to learn magic, he gets swept up into it, into the politics, and I like the way that the magic in here really links to the world and the way that people can survive, and I like that it's also manifested through using colour. So people see colour, they split the light, and then they can transmute it into a tangible form, which is just really cool and especially interesting to read about, especially in action sequences. Question number 7 is Nighteyes, favourite animal companion, and I can't pick anyone other than Nighteyes, to be honest. I have to pick one? Because I don't really have a favourite, but I do have one that comes to mind, and that is Mr. Kindly from the Nevernight trilogy by J. Kristoff. Mr. Kindly is a cat, he's a shadow cat, and he's kind of like a demon who follows Mia, the main character, around, because Mia is going to an assassin school. She wants to take out revenge for the murders of her family, but while she is there, she also has this innate understanding that's, I guess, seen as taboo or frowned upon in this world, and it's when she can traverse shadows, so she can teleport using shadows, which is pretty cool. And Mr. Kindly is a demon that absorbs all of her fear, so she's very fearless, as you would imagine, going through this story, and that provides a lot of risk-taking scenarios. So I like that Mr. Kindly's voice was uppity and sardonic, but he's not my favourite animal companion, but he is one that I can think of, so Mr. Kindly. Question number 8 is Brashen, which is your favourite love interest. Brashen is a character that I adore. I'm going to say that about every character that crops up as a prompt on this list. Anyway, the favourite character that I've got is Henry in this book, because Red, White and Royal Blue was one of my favourite reads at the beginning of this year. It's definitely one of my favourites of 2021, and Henry is the son of the royal family in the United Kingdom, and we follow Alex, who is the son of the woman who's running for the next presidential election in the US. So naturally, with the converging of the political parties and of, I guess, richer people throwing parties in general, Henry and Alex meet up and then they form a romantic interest in each other, and I just love Henry. He's the most wholesome and ridiculous character ever in the best way, and this was such a fun and interesting book, and honestly it is a new favourite for a reason. Read it if you can, because it was so good, and I don't often go for romances, so when I do, you know they're good, so pick this up. And I've probably got the synopsis wrong again, because whenever I describe this I always inevitably get it wrong, because politics is not my thing at all. It's the one thing that I don't really love about this book, even though I gave it a 5 stars. If it took the politics out of it, I'd still love the characters, and that's what stands out to me. Number 9 is Kyle, my favourite villain. And I find it really difficult to think of a particular villain. Again, I would have benefited from actually planning this video before I sat down to film it. I'm thinking of the characters in Joe Abercrombie's books because they're neither heroes nor villains, but I've already talked about him when it comes to character, so I feel like I can't talk about him again. I find the villains in this series incredibly terrifying because they're basically sociopaths. Red Rising, this hinges on a power structure hierarchy system where the reds are the lowest, the golds are the highest, and we follow a red named Darrow, and he wants to exact rebellion and revenge upon the system basically for taking advantage of all of his people in his population. So it's a rebellion story. It's got like an arena kind of vibe in the first book, and I love the way it's so action-packed, and the bad guys are just fully bad guys. They are absolutely terrifying, and I think that's why I like them, because they are really pushing down those who don't have power, and that's what scares me more. So I like the way that things are built in here to be cleverly manipulated and politically empowered in order to, I guess, fight back against the heroes trying to do good. It's a very scary series when it comes to villains, and I just love it. The action is next level, and Darrow is very dramatic in a very good way. So I need to reread these as well, honestly, because I love this trilogy. I say trilogy and I've read up to Dark Age because there's Iron Gold and Dark Age, but I just count the trilogy because those are the ones that I loved, and I didn't love Iron Gold and Dark Age. I might need to reread them before I actually throw them out mentally, but the trilogy is basically where it stands for me. Question number 10 is Kennit, and that is a book or a character that you love to hate. And I love to hate Sarah J Maas because honestly she's got such a massive fan base, but I'm not a fan of her work at all. I did love Throne of Glass, so that's kind of the outlier here, but I didn't love her work as it continued. So I'm going to say Sarah J Maas. Whenever I look at all of the hype around her books, I just don't get it because her writing style is not for me. So when I see people getting excited over all of her stuff, I know that it's a big release that I'm not going to have to worry about. And then question number 11 is Vivacia, which is a favorite character that is a sentient object. And I don't know how far I can really stretch this, but one of the characters, it's up here and I don't want to, hang on, maybe I can get it down. Here we go. One of the characters in this book is an artificial intelligence of a spaceship, and if we're going with characters that aren't really characters or aren't really real or inanimate objects, I guess, I think this would suffice, because the way that Becky Chambers writes character and intent and realization and understandings of identity in the universe are just brilliant. And so when it was incorporated with AI and personality in this book, it was incredibly done. And Becky Chambers is one of my favorite authors. I've got a rough how-to guide if you want to start reading her work and what her writing style is like. And personally, I just adored this book, and I particularly adored the portrayal of an inanimate object, I suppose. It was an interesting integration, thinking about robotics and artificial intelligence alongside humanity. And then question number 12 is tag some friends. I don't usually tag people, but if you want to do this tag, let me know down below and I'll go and check it out. Consider yourself tagged is basically what I'm trying to say, but that is it for this book tag. Thank you so much for watching this video. Come chat to me down in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.